we can move right along to the next section, which is Hilchot Avodah Zarah v'Chukot HaGoyim. And please note that this is the correct term, Hilchot Avodah Zarah v'Chukot HaGoyim, and not Hilchot Akum, which appears in many editions still, unfortunately, which is always, in all cases, an act of censorship. There is not one instance of Chazal using this term, namely Akum. This was an invention of the Christian censors in Europe. Chazal only use three terms to refer to a non-Jew, because the term Akum was used interchangeably, sometimes as a substitute for the term Avodah Zarah, which literally means foreign worship. Yeah, I know that it's often translated as idol worship, but the truth is that's not the exact, precise meaning of the term. Avodah Zarah literally means foreign worship.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Over the centuries, were there different Chachamim who attempted to, despite the censorship, bring back the proper term?
I'm not aware offhand of someone initiating a campaign to do that, but the reason is also very obvious. How exactly would you go about doing it? In other words, why would it be necessary? If you're living in a situation where the books before yourself and other Jews have not been tampered with, then there's nothing to talk about. And if all the books have been tampered with, which is what happens when you print books, so it's not that one copy that was copied by this copyist over a period of months, shall we say, can be tampered with, can be censored. As we see, we have manuscripts of different texts where you can see that a line or a section or a word was blotted out with ink, or if it was on parchment, sometimes it was literally excised, it was cut with a razor and removed. And I have on my computer I have high resolution photographs of entire manuscripts, and you can see this. You see this time and again. But then only one manuscript at a time is being censored, whereas another one somewhere else that this particular person didn't get to. But when you take a manuscript or two or three to the printing house and you tell them, here, print this Masechet Shabbat according to these three manuscripts that we have, and he does so, and he prints 10,000 copies. Well, now, if it's censored, if he's forced to censor it, or if the Catholic Church installs an authorized censor in every printing house, as they did, then now 10,000 copies, 10,000 books have been defaced, have been tampered with, and everyone's going to learn that, and everyone thinks that's what it should say.
There wasn't a sense. It wouldn't have been an instinctive reaction among certain Chachamim over the centuries that this term doesn't seem to make sense, and imagining that it must have been censored?
I'm sure that there were many situations where that did in fact happen. But as time went on, my impression is, at least, as time went on, as the censorship, which began slowly and became more widespread and more ambitious also. In the initial years, the early years of printing Jewish books, so we're talking about the late 15th, early 16th century, then only explicit references to Christianity and the person associated with the beginning of Christianity, only explicit references to those things were changed or deleted. But for instance, a halakha that refers to a non-Jew simply stated Goy, a non-Jew. It was left. Later, as time went on, they became much more ambitious and much more fanatical about this. So every single reference to what they perceived to be a non-Jew, even if they sometimes misunderstood, and the word actually Goy meant a nation, which is what it does mean in the Torah, they decided to switch that to Akum, shall we say, which is a loose term, which sometimes is in place of Avodah Zarah, other times in place of the word Goy or Nochri, referring to a Gentile, whatever the context may be. And over time, these became the only versions of texts that people saw. And to many people, I think it did not occur. Many things did not occur. In fact, if you look, seeing that we're on this topic, let's look for a moment here at Halacha Perek Yod, in Yichot Avodah Zarah, which is where we are anyhow. Yichot Avodah Zarah Perek Yod, Halacha Aleph. You should be able to see this. The Halacha states, En korathim barith lo avodah avodah zarah. Kedei shenaseh mahem shalom unaniach otham le'ovdah. Practically speaking, this is difficult to see. It could happen overseas in Chutz La'aretz, outside Eretz Yisrael, but essentially this would be the case in Eretz Yisrael. This halakha states that the Jewish people are not allowed to conclude some kind of agreement or pact with non-Jews who are of the Avodah Zarah, as it says here, and korathim berith. Berith is an agreement, some kind of understanding and modus vivendi, whereby we allow these people to live amongst us and allow them to maintain their foreign worship. This is what the halacha states. This is what Rambam wrote, and there is no doubt about this. But in the widespread version of the Rambam, what was at least till recently the only version that most people ever got to see, I should say. And then it said, "En korathim berith l'shiv'at hamamim." One cannot make any kind of pact or agreement and allow members of the Shiv'at Amamim, the 7 nations mentioned in the Torah, to live amongst us and continue their foreign worship and child sacrifice and all the various practices, which is a ridiculous statement for many, many reasons. First of all, one can simply check in the manuscripts and even in the early printings of the Rambam, and one sees that's not what it says. Even in the first complete printing of the Rambam from the year Resh Mem, 1480, the Minyanam, printed in Rome, right next door to the Vatican, it said, as it says before us here, En korathim berith l'avodah avodah zarah. It said nothing about Shivat Hamamim. There's also the fact that Rambam writes in Yechot Melachim u'Milchamoth that there are no Shivat Hamamim, that they disappeared. They are not to be found. So therefore, what would this halakha be referring to? And yet, you can find some mefarashim on the Rambam in recent generations who did not understand that this was an act of censorship, and they tried to understand why the Rambam was referring specifically to Shivat Hamamim and not others, and where did the Rambam learn this from? All sorts of unusual discussions which have no place, none whatsoever, because it's simply censorship. So yes, sometimes people do not realize. People who are more attuned to texts in their original form, people therefore who have more experience with the earlier printings and of course with manuscripts, and know how to check what Rishonim themselves quote in various places when quoting a sugya, a statement in the Talmud, shall we say, then one begins to see that one begins to develop a sensitivity and an eye for the correct nusach. And very often you will, so a person will develop this sixth sense, as it were, to the point that before they even have to look up any books to prove the fact, they already know, reading a text, that something's wrong with it. And this, I can testify about myself. This is something that has happened countless times. And I know there's something wrong with this text, or what Rashi says here has been tampered with in some way. And if you know where to look it up, you'll almost always find that this is exactly the case. But if a person does not develop that critical faculty, then unfortunately people will be misled. And that was the purpose of the census, to mislead and to confuse. And there are many such halachot. A good example is the halacha of, which is also here, its source is also here in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, giving a matanaf hinam to a non-Jew, a gift. Does this apply only to an Oved Avodah Zarah? Or you could rephrase the question, what is Avodah Zarah? Is Avodah Zarah only speaking about the Trinity and worshipping images and statues and things of this nature, or is Avodah Zarah a more a broader concept, which includes any form of religion and practice that is not sanctioned by the Torah, which is how I understand the term. And the difference between these two interpretations and understandings of the term has many ramifications, and specifically with regards to this halacha of giving a matanaf hinam to a non-Jew. If you say it applies only to an idol worshipper, to someone who can be claimed to bow down to an idol, or a person who believes in a certain human being as being divine, well, that would apply to Christianity, shall we say, but not to Islam. But if you understand the term to refer to any system which is opposed to the Torah and not sanctioned by the Torah, then it includes Islam. And precisely on this case, in this instance, there is a mahloket amongst the poskim precisely for this reason, because of this this act of censorship. And certain poskim, including in this case Harav Kug Zitzal, was misled by a statement in the Bach. The Bach begins to suggest that this might refer to only a certain type of individual and not another type of individual, such as Ishmaeli. And then he goes on to disprove that premise and says this is not true, and it includes any type of person who follows any foreign system which is opposed to the Torah. But that second half of the Bach, which is quite long, was totally removed. It doesn't appear in the censored versions. It only became apparent in this generation or the previous generation. In other words, 30 years ago or something like that, maybe 40 years ago at the most, when the Torah with the Perushim, like the Bach, these books were reprinted based on accurate sources, and all of a sudden you see the precise opposite. So it's not difficult to be misled, and you have to know how to dig deep sometimes to discover the truth.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement,
please email us at office@machonshilo.org.